Well, it took about 2 months or so, but I finally completed Super Metroid, which means I can finally do the review for this game. Don't get me wrong, I finished it a long time ago, but I couldn't remember enough off the top of my head to do a fair review. Plus, I needed the footage. So I decided to play it again. Granted, it's a pretty big game for anyone who's never touched it before. My last playthrough took me about 5 hours, and I don't remember how long it took me on my first attempt. The Metroid series is a classic series, although my experience with them is pretty limited. I've only ever owned one of them for Game Boy Advance, but I can't remember the title, and honestly, I'm just too damn lazy to look. I've played the original NES game, of course, but I never got close to finishing it. One day I will. One day. Super Metroid is the only other game in the series I have ever played, and it's easily one of the best games the SNES has to offer. It's got amazing graphics, a moody soundtrack, an engrossing environment, and there's a hell of a lot to do. The premise is that you have captured a small baby Metroid a few missions back, and it gets captured by some space pirates. You follow it to another planet known as Zebes, which is broken up into several different areas. Your goal is to find the little Metroid and save it from that intergalactic evil group. This is no easy task though. The terrain is hostile, and you'll need to upgrade your weapons and suit to be able to traverse the environment. There's also a lot of hidden areas, so you'll be playing just as much to explore for power-ups than to actually progress in the game. Regular missiles, super bombs, and energy tanks are just waiting to be found to help you out. To give you an idea of how much there is to find, there's a maximum of 255 missiles to be found, and they come in 5 packs. In my playthrough, I only found about 115 of them. It's a lot of searching to be done. The game starts easy enough, as you infiltrate Zebes, and soon after landing, you find a spot that looks vaguely familiar. In fact, it's similar to the opening area of the original Metroid. You find the morphing ball, which allows you to crouch into a ball to get to tight spots. Soon after, you find the bombs, which allows you to blast through weaker blocks. It feels a bit nostalgic for a while, as even some of the enemies look similar, but there's considerably more detail. In fact, that's one of the greatest things about the game. The graphics are just jaw-dropping for an SNES game. The backgrounds all look like you're in an underground cavern, and the enemy sprites are extremely detailed. Samus herself has some great animation, and it's all smooth. When jumping next to walls, she'll pause for a second to try to kick off of the wall, until you move away from it or jump off. The bosses also have some interesting death animations, and it just shows off the graphical capabilities of the SNES. One of the biggest additions to this game that was absent from the original is the auto map. Now, I never played the Game Boy Metroid, so I can't speak for that, but I know that the NES Metroid didn't include a map, which is probably why I was never able to really get far. I used the map of Metroid a lot. If you get lost, you can just pause the game and see the map of the current area you're in. Pink zones are places you've already explored, and blue ones are the unknown. S's mark save points, and yellow circles indicate energy refills. Believe me, it helps when you're completely lost just to pause the game and check to see where you should possibly look. Of course, it doesn't fill in automatically. You need to either explore each area individually or find a map room, which will populate the majority of the map for the areas you're in. This doesn't show everything, as all of the power-ups won't show up and many hidden rooms won't appear, but it'll give you the majority of the layout. And believe me, even this is helpful. Now, since there's a lot of exploration necessary, it's also required to do a lot of backtracking. Once you get a new ability, a lot of times you'll be heading back to places you remember utilize that ability. For example, once you get the super missiles, you'll be hunting down the green colored doors, as those can only be opened with the super missiles. Once you get the hyperspeed ability, you'll be looking for more blocks to break. It's just those simple ideas that give this game so much playability. You can either just keep progressing to reach the end game, or you can explore to find more stuff to aid you a little bit better if you're having troubles. In your journey, you won't survive just because of the missiles, bombs, or other abilities. You'll also find a few smaller NPCs that will show you how to do other moves. For example, 3 little creatures will show you how to successfully wall jump. A bird-like creature will show you how to run, stop in your tracks, then do a huge jump. These creatures aren't required to learn moves, however. If you already know how to do them, you can perform them at any time. For the wall jump, you can occasionally get smaller stuff like missiles a bit earlier than you normally would be able to. For example, some areas might require the grappling hook, but if you know how to wall jump effectively, you can climb up there yourself. I mentioned wall jumps and the grappling hook, and honestly, that's one of my biggest gripes of the game. The wall jumps can be unnecessarily difficult to pull off, as the timing needs to be perfect. Basically, to perform the wall jump, you jump at a wall so that you're spinning in the air, and when you touch the wall, you push the opposite direction on the controller to jump. If done right, Samus will bounce off the wall. If done wrong, you'll just plummet down to the bottom of the pit. The grappling hook can get annoying because it takes a second to be fully extended, and by then you could have fallen out of reach for the ledge you're trying to grab. There's also only certain blocks that can be latched onto, and nearing the end of the game, you'll find that it's completely forgotten. In fact, for the most part, once you get past the sunken ship, you won't need to worry about the grappling hook nearly as much anymore. Another power-up that shows its face and is welcome to your armory is the X-ray beam. This simple device doesn't detract from your ability to fire, but instead prevents you from dashing. Instead of dashing, by pressing A, you'll emit a narrow beam that discloses all locations of any destroyable blocks. This is extremely helpful when trying to find extra missiles and such, because it'll give you those locations easily enough. Another slight issue with the game is the reuse of the enemies. As you progress, you'll start to notice recycled enemy sprites, although they just become recolored and larger in size. Naturally, they'll do and take more damage, but when you get down to it, they're still the same retextured enemy. At least there's still a lot of variety to the enemy types. In fact, some of the creatures won't be able to be killed at all unless you upgrade your weapon. And even then, some enemies will still refuse to take damage, forcing you to just bypass them and avoid them completely. The bosses could be extremely frustrating or extremely easy, depending on how you approach them. Most of them have a vulnerable spot, and also won't be damaged by normal shots. The easiest way is to bombard them with missiles, but you can also use the charge beam if you have it. One of the bosses can be taken out even more easily. If you destroy the turrets surrounding the room, an electric current will remain. When the boss latches on you and starts sucking the life out of you, just use the grappling hook to grab a current and hold on. You'll take a little bit of damage, but the boss will take a lot more and die extremely quickly. So you may be wondering if you ever actually find the Metroid. Well, sort of. I won't spoil the ending for you, but the end of the game makes the playthrough worth it, although in my eyes the final boss really wasn't much of a challenge, and I didn't even have full health at the beginning of it. As you may have expected, it is Mother Brain, and you're forced to fight her just like the NES version. Although after that, she turns into a freak and is naturally a bit pissed. However, before you can even think of fighting Mother Brain, you have to defeat the other 4 bosses. In the beginning of the game, you'll probably find a statue of all 4 of the bosses melded together. Every time you defeat one, when you go back to this statue, the part where the dead boss resides turns gray. Completely destroy all 4 of the Guardians, and the path to Mother Brain is revealed. The only problem I had with the controls is that the jumping may take a bit of getting used to. Maybe it's just the gravity on Zeebs, but something just doesn't feel right with the jumping to me. When you get the space jump, which allows you to constantly jump in the air without touching the ground, it seems to get worse, as a lot of times, even though I press B to jump, she refuses to perform another space jump, so I just fall back to the ground, needing to start the jump over. When you're navigating large chasms like this, it can be more than annoying to have to start jumps over constantly because button presses don't seem to be following through. However, the actual necessity of the space jump is actually minimal. It's more of a convenience than a requirement. Other than this problem though, Samus moves fluently. She'll always go into a crouch before morphing into a ball, so taking on lower enemies is much easier and doesn't force you to jump and shoot down. The feature of being able to fire diagonally is a welcome addition as well. There's also an option where if you hold R or L, you'll moonwalk, allowing you to move backwards while still firing in front of you. This is a matter of taste, but after about an hour, I saved my game, reset it, then turned off that damn moonwalking. To me, it was just too slow, and it got me damaged more than I should have been. I can't really think of anything else to say. I can only simply say, you need to play this game. It's open enough so that you won't feel like your hand is being held, but linear enough so that you won't get completely lost either. The difficulty feels just right, and although you'll probably die a few times, you'll learn from your mistakes. There's a reason why this is rated as one of the best games ever made, and I can easily vouch for that. My score? 10 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.